meeting to order, so I will call the Overy County Solid Waste Authority pre-budget workshop to order. Mr. Norfleet, would you mind giving us an invocation? And Mr. Schwartz, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'll be happy to do that.
Be honored. Bow your head, please. Dear Heavenly Father, look over and bless this meeting today and give us guidance and send us in the right direction as we try to look after the citizens of Overy County today and keep our mind and heart in the right place. And Lord, look after those that are living in harm's way, that we have the freedom to live like we do today. In Son's name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Apologies. Code enforcement was shut down.
It's okay, I understand, I know you got a bunch of claims.
Well, more time, my fault.
We need to get the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Ayes have it, and the agenda is approved. So we will follow the agenda, and looks like year-to-date finance report. Ms. Bidden, you're up.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to give you a kind of a quick review. I didn't have the figures for the last board meeting through November. So these figures that you'll see here at the top are through November. As you can see, our revenue year to date, we're at $11,107,641.77, which is at 44% of budget. So we're staying ahead of budget, which is great. Our expenses are at $9,721,751.18. Our expenses staying below budget at 38.6% of budget. And year-to-date net income of $1,385,890.59. Moving down, I just wanted to kind of go over our C&D processing facility and our materials recycling facility. As you can see, the C&D processing facility continues to run in a deficit of expenses over revenue of $134,165.80. The materials recycling facility with the collection hauling program also continues to run at a deficit with expenses over revenue of $691,100.17. Just want to kind of point those out because, of course, those deficits are currently being covered by any overage that we're seeing with our revenue, of course, over expenses. Tipping fees helping to cover that currently. We've done this in the past, but this is continuing to, with the prices being as low as they are on the sales of the marketables, it's starting to increase. So just an area that I wanted to kind of draw attention to for discussion for later. Down below, I just wanted to briefly kind of go over the designated accounts. The current balance for the equipment replacement account is $5,086,934. What we had budgeted for this year was $5,065,000 to spend. Currently, year to date, we have spent $1,502,767. What makes up the $1.5 million is we have paid MachineX $990,000 towards the MRF equipment, and then of course we did purchase a bulldozer from Blanchard. So just wanted to show if we were to spend everything, we would definitely be running that equipment replacement account very low. There'll be some things, of course, that we don't actually end up purchasing. This also doesn't reflect all of the money we'll be putting back into the account this year, nor does it reflect the transfer that was approved at the last board meeting. Same with the construction and development account. And this construction and development account is our general construction development. It's the one that we actually use for any infrastructure. Currently, as you can see, with the year-to-date expenses being $849,000, that's what we did for the Scales project. That's what we paid this year towards the Scales project. So any kind of roads, anything, any additions to the buildings that we need to do, anything like that comes out of this construction and development account. This isn't landfill construction, this is just our infrastructure. And as you can see, the current balance is $1.3 million. What we had budgeted this year was $1.575. And like I said, that's if we did everything that we had budgeted, and if you'll remember, and I'll kind of go over this a little bit more later, there were a lot of projects that we actually cut out this year that we did not even budget for because we knew we would not have the funds available. So that's just like I said, I just wanted to kind of give you a quick summary of the financials and kind of where we are currently. I'm gonna move on to the next item, which is an update from Mr. Moore on our, landfill construction, closure, and post-closure.
Let me say this before Vance gets started. We're looking at recommending tipping fee increase. And where we want to direct our recommendation is towards these recycling accounts. They're down, the prices are down, we're all feeling it, everyone's feeling it. What was the idea? Right now, there's a zero tipping fee at the MRF for recycling. Thought about putting a tipping fee on there, what would that do? And we thought about, well, we just put tipping fees on at the main gate. And that way, everybody that generates trash in Overy County helps pay a little bit on the recycling. I think we can sell that tipping fee increase better. And Mr. Johnson not here, but he wanted to feel more comfortable on the closure and post-closure account. I think if we go there with a tipping fee, the group's gonna say in the community, well, we knew the tipping fees weren't enough, you taking money out of it, you shouldn't have. But what Vance is going to tell you is how he figures these things, and I think there is a comfort level in his figures, and we feel comfortable with those. But we'll talk more about this at the end of the meeting. Want it to be kind of more questions, answered, discussion, rather than very, very technical. I mean, Vance has got a book in here that tells every point, everything, figures how everything is figured. But we want to feel good when we leave here today. We've got some direction, feeling between the staff and the board on where we need to be going. And with that,
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Johnson just texted me and said he'd be here in about 20 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Well, he can catch the tail end that we're gonna go over. But I think the tipping fee idea is something that we really need to consider. Bo mentioned a couple of meetings ago about the disparity that we're having at the recycling center. And how long can we continue to manage that?
We're diverting 6
Right.
months.
All of that
from
stuff.
the landfill, there's a point of diminishing.
So we have to look at, and according to what you're just saying, the cost is rising for us to continue to take money to help manage that. So we're gonna have to look at something to capture that cost, because it's only gonna get worse. And so now may be a good time to look at that.
and I'm hoping when we finish the meeting today, we've got a pretty good idea that that's what we need to do.
Yeah, okay.
And then we can advise the county and the cities that staff's gonna recommend a tipping fee increase where they can go ahead and start talking about it in their budget process. Is it coming up?
I realized, and I think we figured out at one time, what the cost was of new landfill space, and some of that offsets the actual monetary. And I remember you figured it out at one time, so some of that I agree offsets it. But I think you're right, we need to do something to bring that more in line. I don't run my household on a deficit. I don't think we should here, but I do think we should work it around whether we still take the recyclables and we do not put them in the landfill. So
And
that
this,
needs to be
this
done.
construction account, before I got here, Larry wanted to keep $2 million in
in that budget. And that budget is future development, any type of construction. If we had to put in a new leachate collection system, it would come out of that fund. But that fund, I think we need to keep that fund at a level. This road out here, we've been prolonging the agony. But I know 10 years since I've been here, and it's longer than that.
Since it was new.
Yeah, yeah. So, we feel good about where we are, and I feel good on where we need to be going, and we just want y'all to feel good also on, what direction you would like us to go.
Y'all will go ahead and go forth with the closure and post-closure, or wait for Mr. Johnson.
Let's proceed on.
Yeah. So, what I'll start with is the closure liabilities. And first thing that I have in there is a picture you see here. And what that does is describes the areas that are required to have a closure system put on it.
Page 4.
Yeah, so I'm on page 4, and so what you may recall is the area down here is the 27-acre landfill that's originally permitted. We closed 17 acres of it, so that's already achieved closure. In this section over here, the remaining area in this kind of magenta color is your Class 3 landfill that is open and active and will require a cap system. I think if you see that as saying it's, if I'm reading that right, 76 acres. I don't have my glasses on.
Yes, it is.
78 acres. All right, and then you see above it a blue hatched area, which is the Class 2 area that would have to have a cap system. They're essentially the same capping system. You have to close the way our permit's written, you have to close your Class 2 with a Class 3 cap system. In other words, the synthetic liner capping system has to be put over both of them. So if you add those two together, I believe you got 112 acres of closure that is required. So if you go to the next sheet, there's a spreadsheet. I don't want to get into too much of this, but what I wanted you to understand from this is that we do a detailed line item cost estimate for this closure system to be constructed over. It is for the entire area that remains to be closed. So you'll see it's for a 112-acre area. This is based on the permitted cap system, which is a synthetic liner with 3.5 feet of soil on top of it. So this is a soil cap system. The soil in this cap system is based upon previous bids. We've done a cap system on, I failed to mention that we've also done a cap system on the landfill on this part out here, the Class 2. So we've got two projects, two separate projects, different contractors doing it. They gave us bids with off-site soils. So the estimate here is based upon an off-site soil being purchased, hauled over the road to be brought in here. My estimation is the most expensive soil that you're going to obtain, and if we use on-site soils, it would be cheaper than what I'm assuming in this estimate. So when you add it all up and you put all the costs in there for construction quality assurance and so forth, it's a pretty big number at the bottom. What you'll see is about $31 million, a little over $31 million is the liability for closing all the areas that are currently open. If you divide that, though, it's about $279,000 an acre. So that puts you on a comparison for everybody else in the state that's putting cap systems in. And so some of you may recall, I did a presentation at the South Carolina SWANA down in Pawleys Island a number of years ago comparing what the cost per acre was for all the facilities in the state. They varied from the low 110,000 up to, and Horry County was the highest. We were the highest cost per acre of any county or any permitted facility in the state. That doesn't mean you're actually cost more than anybody else. I'm saying that what you're saying up front, your estimate is, that is approved by DHEC was the highest cost of any county in the state. If you look at a lot of the private facilities, most of those are going to be in the $150 an acre, $150,000 an acre is what they're putting aside as their liabilities. So on top of these estimates, this does include a 5% contingency. What that's saying is for unknowns, things that we did not specifically count on, we put a 5% contingency in here. And so another thing that I would say that is on the horizon is that the last time we went through a closure project, we were under the consideration of another alternative cap system like Berkeley County did called closure turf, which is essentially, it looks like AstroTurf. It eliminates the need for putting any kind of dirt. It's all synthetic. Back in that time frame, that was still kind of new technology, and they have learned some things on that, but it's one that I believe is becoming more and more prevalent, and one that I would recommend that we consider as an alternative to soil caps in the future. And I think if we do go in that direction, it does nothing but reduce closure costs. So we're planning on, in my mind, worst case scenarios and hoping, we're putting money aside on worst case scenarios and hoping for better scenarios when it comes time to do that. So I'll get into funding in a little bit. So that's the closure side, that's building cap systems. Then we go to post-closure. And so post-closure is all the activities you have to do in the 30 years after you close it to maintain and monitor the site. Maintaining is like mowing. If you got the grass cover on it, this thing has to be mowed annually. You have to monitor the groundwater wells semi-annually for 30 years. In accordance, you got to maintain your leachate system. All these types of things are in here. So I've got an estimate for that. That estimate again is same presentation. We were not on the low end of the cost per acre that compared to other folks. We were at the high end on this estimate. This estimate has a 10% contingency built into it. The reason I would say that I felt higher contingency is that post-closure is something that not a lot of folks have done. And as you get into it, you start learning more about what, maybe we didn't plan on so good up front. So have a little bit more of an unknown. So that's one of the reasons I have a higher contingency on your post-closure costs. But again, if you were to do something like use closure turf, I'm just using this as an example. This estimate here has, $1.2 million in there just for mowing grass. That's something you wouldn't do if you had a synthetic cap system in here. So they kind of go hand in glove. There's cost in here of $900,000 to revegetate washouts, things like that, things that you may not have to do depending on your cap system. So they go back and forth. The main point I'm trying to tell you is I think that we are on what I'd consider to be the high cost, conservative cost estimate, hoping that when it comes to really paying out the cost, it'd be less than what we're planning here.
And synthetic options would be less.
That's what we're hoping, yes, sir. So I'm not assuming a low-cost alternative and not able to do it. I know that a lot of the landfills, like when they close, like to have grass, keep them looking decent and pretty and all the stuff. What's the synthetic stuff gonna look like? You don't have to mow it. What's gonna happen to it in 10 years, 20 years? Are we gonna just have a brown hill? Or do you have to come and do something for it? Because now you're gonna have a hill back here with a soi, if you do that. I don't know how long this stuff lasts.
I would think it would rot and have problems and have to be replaced at some point. I've never known anything synthetic that didn't.
And I guess that was my
Plastic's
question.
indestructible.
Yeah, maybe I'll put plastic on top of it.
Yeah, it is a
plastic.
plastic bag.
It is a plastic. I use the term AstroTurf because people can relate to it. They've seen football fields and all built out of it. It's not AstroTurf, but it's the same. It is a polypropylene material. It has UV inhibitors in it to keep it from breaking down. And it's been used in other fields, mining, construction, and so forth, longer than it's been in the landfill side of things. But there's more and more research that's going on because it is being used. I was just saying, I've been on a tour of a lot of the utility sites that are closing it, and I'm shocked at the amount of people that have adopted the closure turf versus the traditional soil cap system. Well, I'm not shocked, I'm surprised at how quickly it's catching on. I would say that I was not a huge proponent back when we considered it last time, because I thought it was experimental.
Well, I'm not surprised that private industry or people do, because it's cheaper on the outset, and they don't usually have any problem 10 years from them. The taxpayer picks it up, but that's not the case here.
And I guess my concern is, it hasn't been used long enough to have a long-term concept.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it's gonna look like in 30 years, 20 years from now, because we don't have that data, do we?
No, so, I'm not saying make the decision. I'm saying-
I know, I'm just saying,
We're just
I don't wanna bog you down. Go ahead. Here we go.
Well, we're finding fault with what you're saying, but the given that we already know, if you growing it, you got a problem.
Yeah.
And that is never, ever gonna quit between the drought you put in a water system,
Right.
between the cold and it freezes. That anybody that's ever farmed to any degree at all, that's a never-ending problem that is never, ever going away in 100 years. Now, I don't know how long this stuff will last, but I think it's worth listening to him and looking at before we make a decision like this is gonna be a problem, because we don't know that. I know that if you're growing grass out there, that's gonna be a problem.
I
That's
understand.
guaranteed.
We should be stockpiling polypropylene on the side for future use.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just curious about, I'm not against it. I'm just curious of, how much information we have about it, since you're saying it's a kind of new concept.
So the point is, we have planned for the worst-case scenario,
Every time.
and we've got that covered.
Right.
And that's what we're asking, just to make sure we
Yeah, right.
understand it.
Now, when we bid this thing, we could actually bid it using our dirt, using off-site dirt, and using a synthetic cover. You get all those different prices in, and if it's a world of difference, and that's something we'll talk about at that time and based on, warranties and that type of stuff. But I think the point that we're making is we're covered for the worst case scenario of whatever, and,
At least we have
other than an
options.
earthquake or something like that, but, we got time to make those decisions and discussions down the road. We went to Berkeley County when they had put that carpet down there and took a look at it probably 8 years ago. And at that time, we just didn't feel comfortable with it. It was too new. It didn't look real good to me, and the valleys and the creases and everything, but, I'm sure they have,
They have carpet stretchers now.
Is that the one with the chair up on the wall?
It's manufactured in Georgetown County, isn't it?
Well, Agru is part of it. Water, they have partners with them that do the actually green part. Agru does the drainage net up underneath it. But they're part, something, I forget, you caught me off guard, something Geo manufactures the actual green part that goes on top, and it's not manufactured in Georgetown. But Agru has a partnership for this system.
Go ahead, Carl.
Max, in your travels around, have you noticed in the post-closure where they've used it for a recreational site? I was at a place in upstate New York where 4th of July, middle of summer, they were actually using it for snowboarding. And they actually generated revenue in conjunction with either Parks and Recreation or in one case, it was actually a private guy, a guy that owned a ski resort. And he just decided to make money instead of just in the winter when there's snow, he decided to make money in the summer he had developed other kinds of skis and another type of snowboard, and they were guys out there in their shorts and swimsuit skiing and snowboarding in the summer.
We could put mobiles under the fabric.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it turned out to be quite a revenue generator.
What my takeaway from this is, we're putting money aside. Assuming we're gonna build a traditional cap system.
Okay.
If I had to look in the crystal ball and predict when you have to make the decision, I believe it's more and more likely as time goes on, you're gonna migrate towards a synthetic. And I think the synthetic is going to be less than the traditional dirt. So I believe that you're given the option to build whatever you want, and if it works in your interest to do it down the road, you have the option. My point I'm trying to make.
Question.
Go ahead, Bob.
Are you aware of an active reuse that could generate income?
Reuse of,
Of the site, the 200 acres, is any portion of it reusable in an economic situation that could help pay for its future maintenance?
okay, so, this is, I don't want to give a too simple a question, but I would say this. I'm being asked on a number of sites. I'm doing one right now in Jackson County, North Carolina, which is up in the mountains, and they have a old cap that they won't open up as a park. They're collecting gas off of it, they're making pottery from the gas that's making the heat to do the pottery. And so they want to open up walking trails and so forth and so on. It sounds, on the surface, it sounds like a great idea. But when you start thinking about liabilities, about what happens when somebody gets a whiff of the wrong gas, or everybody's gonna say, you should have known, you should have known. So I'm going to be on the side of got property around the landfill that you may be able to allow people to use, but on the facility itself is something that you probably don't want the public in and about, because even if you could put paths on it, inevitably they're gonna leave the path, they're gonna go say, what's up in that pipe, light the lighter, and poof, and I'd keep the public off if I could.
And so I've seen that happen. There's in Southern California, Los Angeles, there's a place called Industry Hills, City of Industry Hills. And they built a 36-hole golf course on this landfill. And they put the plastic pipe in, they had the vents coming up to vent the gas. And the foursome that was playing in front of me, some guy made some remark about that. He says, well, that's where the gas come out. Can't you see the witches where those wavy lines coming out? The other guy says, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Guy goes, takes his lighter, holds it, man, there's flames shoot up. High as this thing right here. They had this fire and they didn't know what to do with it. They ultimately took a beer can, cut the top off the beer can, put it over the pipe and killed the fire. So yeah, you do have to be.
It's called a hole in one.
Yeah. So you really do have to really be careful with something like that. But what happens, they ultimately were able to.
We're not fighting with that. I guess we're getting a little too technical. So let me let you go ahead with your presentation.
Cover the gas,
So don't plan on any future income.
Yeah.
So what I would tell you is that these estimates are on today's dollars. So what's gonna happen is the closure is gonna happen many years down the road. And so what we're saying is we want to have enough money to pay in those dollars when it's time to do it. So I'm gonna walk you through very quickly how we plan to do that. So what we do is we say, we have this much money in the bank today designated towards this. We're going to need this much in the year that we're predicting to close it out to do the closure. So think about this per acre cost. Per acre is going to be more next year and every year thereafter. That cost is going to go up annually. All right? So the point I'm making there is the longer it takes to get to closure, the more expensive it's going to be. So if you want to make your closure as cheap as possible, fill this thing up in a year and close it next year, it's going to be cheaper than if you take 50 years to fill it up. because you're gonna pay 50 years of inflation based on this estimate. So what we're doing to do the funding of this is we say, we have capacity that we are filling on an annual basis, and we predict what year that capacity will be full. So if we said we're putting, we have a set number of tons that we can dispose, we're putting this much annually, we're predicting, based on our latest projection, that you're gonna run out of capacity in 2041. That's all the permitted capacity. So you have to pay $2041 to close out this. So you have to inflate these dollars to $2041. So that's what we're doing. And then, so the how long it lasts, that tells us how many years of inflation we put on it. That's important for one thing. The other thing that's important, it says, all right, you take the $2041 and you take whatever money you got to make today, and the difference is how much money you got to make between now and then. You take the difference of the money you got to make between now and then, and you divide it by the number of tons you're going to put into it between now and then, and you get $1 per ton. So what you'll see is that this table here was predicting basically the total capacity, and it's giving us, this is where we're doing our projection of how many tons do we have left to fund this in the future.
He's on page 12.
I'm on page 12. You go to 13, it kind of shows the timing based on our annual projection of how long this thing, this is how we got to 2041 being the year we're going to have to do closure. Now, another way conservatism is built into this. This is saying we're not closing 1 inch of this thing until the end. So all of this is under the assumption we're paying inflation on all of this till 2041. Let's just say that you decided half this site got to final capacity in 2030, and you closed it in $2030. It's actually cheaper than what we're predicting. So if you do partial closures as you go along, it's going to be cheaper than what we're doing the funding. So you go to table 5, which is on page 14, looks like this. This is just the divide by. It just says, I did an estimate on all those spreadsheets that said this is our estimate in today's dollars. It said that we're going to need those dollars in 2041, so you see how 31 million really is $48 million. Really need $48 million by the time you're on the due closure. You got 8.9 million, I'm on the closure cost, using that as an example. 48 million, you got 8 million, so you got to make up $40 million between now and then. You've got the tons that were on the sheet before, you do the divide by, you say, well, I need $39 million divided by the number, I need $5 for every ton that comes in here to be set aside, so I have that $48 million in the bank by the time I need it. So that's the way we do the funding. All of this, when you put all this together, I'm trying to tell you that we've tried to build conservatism on top of conservatism, and there are ways that doing different closures, doing it at different times, and so forth, that you'll have the option to come in cheaper, hopefully, than what I'm predicting here. So I hope I'm telling you this is this much, and I hope when we do it, it's going to be this much. That's really the whole point of this whole presentation, is not to be the opposite. It's not that I'm telling you this and, how are we going to make up the difference? I'm having a hard time of seeing where we would.
And collect in the past, so we've got to look for the worst case.
So that's what we're trying to do. And this whole model on both sides is set on really trying to overshoot the target and give you some flexibility to do better. That's the way the whole funding system is being set up. And so, I would say that, I do this for a lot of people. If you look at funding it on a percent full basis, you're all in as good a shape as any client I've got.
I think you've done a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And so this gives us the max. This would be the worst case scenario.
And you see, he's got $5.98 a ton, and we're currently putting aside $6.50 a ton. That also includes landfill construction. You know, so we're putting aside this plus an additional amount to cover landfill construction. So,
We're doing that funding the same thought
exactly right.
process.
But you have to be careful because assumptions about future inflation can be tails wagging dogs.
Sure. So, absolutely. And so that's why we update it every year. And we use the best information we can to make that decision of what are inflation rates. And the best prediction is historical. So, you know, the thing that is unknown right now is what inflation do you want to plan on? This is based on 2% annual inflation. You can certainly choose any number you feel comfortable with, but historical numbers suggest this is adequate. Now, you could have short terms that are going to be more volatile, but I think over the time period that we're talking about, 2% is an amount that's accepted in the accounting world is a reasonable projection.
$7 that we put on a couple of years ago, I'm assuming a lot of that is going toward that $6 and something.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that was one of the reasons we did feel like we needed to
Right.
do that. So
Yes, ma'am.
that's where a lot of that is going.
It's going for the closure, post-closure, and landfill construction. Yes, ma'am.
We were short on the closure, post-closure money there at one time.
And as you can see, it's getting, if you look at post-closure, we're well, way ahead. We're getting those caught up and getting,
Right.
yes, sir.
All right, any more questions for Matt? You still on, or that's,
I think I had some agenda items down under number 3.
Right.
okay, all right.
And like I said, I'll kind of skip over the tipping fee increase possibilities. We can kind of talk about that when we get to some of the recommendations. I'm gonna let Mike talk to you a little bit about the recycling counts, kind of where we are with the market prices.
Something special. Oh, but of course, I'm sure it is.
Is this his latest toy?
Did it come, it came in, did we got it then? It's a picture of the compactor, what it is. The new one we just bought.
I like those tires.
Look like an Aljon color.
It is an Aljon.
Oh, best color in the world.
Mr. Campbell, you got more coming your way.
Thank you.
You know, it's, of everything I'm reading, talking to buyers and everything, our market prices, we don't see them changing at all for at least 18 months. We're always searching, we're getting some new buyers in. What's happening with our new buyers is they're bidding lower pricing, or they're bidding with contingencies to try to charge back. And we try to go for the more firm price. The things I gave you here is a lot of the same way what you see in your board packets a lot of times. But it's sort of separated by commodity, so that you can more.
So you're seeing a bottom here,
I think
because
it's
are we
bottom
being
out.
too rosy and thinking it won't get worse from here is the question.
I think overall it won't. There'll be some products that will go down. I mean, last month we sold cardboard for $16.67. What, 18 months ago, we were selling for $250 a ton?
Right.
But all the market indicators have said it's pretty much bottom. And, but with that bottom, you're talking in excess of $100,000 a month in loss in revenue and, or the expenses that, over revenue. We do see that with the new machinery coming in, there's gonna be some labor savings. Not to that significance, though. You're probably talking, less than 20% will be saving per month on, expenses on as far as labor. We'll probably go from anywhere from, we've got about 24 people now, probably somewhere around 15. People on the line with the new equipment gets running in several ways. We are pushing for, the buyers are pushing for cleaner material. You know, less than 0.5% is hard to do. I mean, it don't take, you know, you're talking about 6 pounds in a 1,600-pound bale. That don't take very much. So we got that going on there, and it is definitely, we think it's pretty much, it's about to zero, you know, and where it's gonna be at. Newspaper, most people are paying to get rid of mixed paper. We're selling it for 12.5 tons, which I agreed to that through a contractual agreement with Pratt a year ago. And it has protected us because they pay us $12.50 a ton for mixed paper because it was an agreement that was made a year ago. At the time I was selling it, could have sold it for $25 a ton, but all indicators in the market was that it was going south, and I tried to stabilize that market.
How long is that good for?
For another 6 months. And they use it in their Georgia plant. So they got a guarantee mixed paper here. But we pretty much, we think we're gonna see some ups and downs a little bit a month, but when you look at the average over 18 months, probably gonna stay about the same.
How many other commodities is there potential to do on a contractual basis for over our monthly bills?
Well, when you do that, you lock yourself into, I would recommend going into it now because it's at its bottom. So they're gonna want it at those prices are close to for a period of time. And, you know, you take newspaper, it's been known to jump $25 in a month. And those little extra revenues help out a lot. So it's a risky market, and all I can do is look at it on a month-to-month basis to see what I can do. We look at it, we read indicators, we talk to our buyers, try to get the thing in the market, try to do it. But I think we're pretty much where the prices is gonna be. Now, could something happen? Something could happen, make it go down. There's no guarantee. It's like playing the stock market. And I've never liked the stock market, but that's about what you're doing the whole time you're selling these products. And when private industry comes up to you and tells you, it's, you know, we don't like what you're doing, we'd rather you sign a contract with us, but it works.
Lately, I've sent you several things and you probably get them. And what I was hoping for was some feedback from you on what, they have lists of things now that we may have that used to you couldn't get rid of, people would get it or buy it. Have you seen anything in there that would show?
Well, when you send them to it, we get those same emails too.
Right.
And we look at them and we research them. 90%, I'd say 90% of the time where we find our new market is through our other buyers. Or we go to these seminars. We find more of these things through seminars, like we're now gonna start belling 5-gallon buckets.
Yeah.
Because I found a market for them. 4s, 5s, and 7s. When our 3 through 7s, we've always reached these men with our scrap plastic. Scrap plastic buyers no longer want them in it. So when the new plant starts up in February, we're gonna start separating 4s, 5s, and 7s, baling them, and we'll be selling those for 25 cents a pound. So we're always looking for all kinds of markets we can. There's some things we get a hold of and we just can't get rid of it. Like scrap plastic right now is not selling at all. So my intent is to go back through that scrap plastic, take all the 3 through 7s out so I can sell the rest of it. But I want to wait after we get a new plant.
I think I sent you one, there's a conference, California, which I'm not going to, but you may want to because I think everything listed was working with people that now have a source for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can look at it and read and see if you think it and call those people, but it interested me because there was a whole list of things that had to do with zero waste and the new concepts they have of what they're doing with that. So you may want to look at that as a staff member. I don't care anything about going to it, but you may.
Yeah. Well, we always look for that market, and when we do find a market, you know, it helps. Stephanie's having to pay to get rid of 5-gallon buckets and stuff that that she's taking paint out in
You checked how
HHW.
close it.
Now we're gonna be bailing those. We're gonna be separating them at the SW6 building, and that'll go. But I know the SW6 building don't get that revenue, but the MRF's the one selling them along with everything else, but it comes in, we still get the revenue overall. They just don't show up on the P&L statement as what goes to specific things. I do think that the market's pretty much where it's gonna be for the next 18 months, and it's a low market.
Do you think it's gonna go up in any way? Do you think
I
anything
think you'll
at all?
see spikes.
Yeah,
You'll see spikes, but I don't see China ever going back to what it was. When you take as many tons as they took, there's just no place else for them to
for
go.
it to go.
Indonesia is beginning to tighten it up. Other countries are tightening up that thing. Our goal is to get it as clean as we can get it. Get the contaminants out of it. That's why we sat down and talked to all the cities about, you gotta clean your material up. The reason you gotta clean your material up, because if I can't get rid of it, it's gonna have to go to the landfill.
And if it does that, when we take their stuff and it comes in and they don't pay for that to go in there, and part or percentage of that, just like we checked on Charleston, was 14%, over our 14%, do we charge them back for what? Well,
Because when you mix it in, they have no way to separate it out. You know, if you get a tractor trailer in, you can only guess. And when you start guessing stuff, you just get a whole different personality, and personalities clashing at each other. Well, I know there wasn't that much in there, well, there was, no, there weren't, yeah, there was. It's a lot easier just to say, you know, if you bring in, and it's a quarter's worth of garbage in it, or there's a lot of garbage, or there's stuff in it that's not supposed to be in it. We had one city that would take a quarter truckload of garbage and add recyclables to it and bring it to us. We didn't know it till it got on the floor, because the garbage was in the front of the truck. When it gets on the floor, it's there, then we gotta handle it, gotta get rid of it, bring it over here and pay tipping fees for it. So we did start penalties to penalize them for that, and we've had a good response from most of the cities
okay.
about cleaning it up.
I hope the fine will pay for it.
That's that
It should be big
contamination
enough
fee?
to pay for
That's
the
the
problem.
contamination fee. So an average garbage truck will have about 5 tons in it. And our minimum fee is $150 contamination, misrepresented load fee is what it's called. And it's $150, so you can divide that out. They're gonna pay $20-some dollars a ton, or what they're gonna pay. And we just don't do the cities that way, we do the private industry that way. They come in and represent one thing and it ends up being another. And they just pass it right back to the customer.
Equipment replacement account. Have you turn over to page 22? And I'm gonna talk about the equipment replacement account and the construction development account, as I mentioned earlier. These sheets are always in our budget every year. We do a 5-year capital budget. And what I've got here is I've got what our balance was in the equipment replacement fund as of June 30th, which was the 5.3 million. As you can see, we anticipate putting money into that account each year based on depreciation, with a little bit of interest, and then of course our expenditures. So what I've got highlighted for you is based on our 5-year budget, with no transfers at all into this account, where we would be each year. And as you can see, by the end of 21, we'd be at 218,000 in this account. And by 23, we'd be in a negative. And that has to do, of course, because this account is not growing as fast as what, it costs to replace equipment. That's why these transfers are so important to help build this account back up. We were able to, at the end of last year, of course, to do a $1.2 million transfer into this account, which we were very fortunate to do so, which is one of the reasons the tipping fee increase would be a tremendous help. It would allow us to help cover those expenses for the MRF, that we hopefully be able to allow us to transfer more money into this account. Same on page 23, which is our construction development. There's absolutely no money transferred into this account except for any money that we transfer through a transfer. And just as a reminder, like Danny had mentioned earlier, we actually cut items. For one thing, the road out here was $1 million. The road into the MRF was $750,000 that we actually took out because there was absolutely no way to even put it in our budget. And as you can see, We don't have anything going out, but just in this year, we've had to cut some of these projects. Some of these projects probably won't even take place, so, like I said, any money that we can do to build this account up is gonna have to be through transfers. And this is very important, as Danny mentioned and Mike mentioned, this is what builds our infrastructure, builds roads on the landfill. Anything that we need to do, any new development for any new projects we wanna take on has to come out of this account. And like you mentioned, having $2 million in this account at all times would be great. And in order for us to be able to do that, it would definitely be through transfers. And there again, like I said, we were able to transfer about $900,000 at the end of the year. But like I said, with the tipping fee increase, hopefully we can continue to be able to do that to build this account back up. These are our two designated accounts that probably we are seeing the most, the lowest levels in. And the two that I mentioned, of course, at the budget retreat last year, just bringing it to your attention again this year, because like I said, they are important. They're important for us to continue our operations here, which is, like I said, why I kind of wanted to point those out. The staff does a great job of always looking at their equipment every year, pushing out purchasing, only purchasing what they absolutely need to. You can see the items listed here on the equipment replacement. So far we've only purchased a few items this year, and they'll continue to look at those. If it's something they don't feel like they need to purchase this year, they'll push it out a year. But you can only do that for so long. Eventually it catches up. And so, like I said, that's kind of where we are, which is why the tipping fee increase will be a big help, a really big help.
And explain where the transfer money comes from.
Right, and our transfers, like I said, we set that up several years ago where we look at that on a quarterly basis. And it's our revenue over expenses, but we have to maintain 15% as well, 15 of our revenue, what we have budgeted for revenue, 15% in there. So anything above and beyond that. And like I said, last year we were fortunate enough, but we also, reminder, we had Charleston for 7 months of the year. Our market prices also didn't drop until about the spring of last year. So when we're going into this year, we don't have those luxuries that we did last year. I don't anticipate us being able to make the transfers this year by any means that we were able to do last year. And so like I said, that's where that transfer money actually comes from, is any revenue over expenses. As you can see now, year to date this year, we're only at a little over $1 million, where last year this time we had more than that, of course. So like I
Did
said,
you do an analysis of exactly what benefit Charleston was to us over the whole period?
I can go back and kind of
I
take
think
a
it'd be
look.
nice to know, because that was a battle that we fought with council. And I think all of us would feel a lot better knowing exactly what the impact was of that period of time.
And I did, because like I said, we would always kind of separate it on the spreadsheet, but I'll go back and pull that out so we can take a look at that. Yes, sir.
Are you sure you want to get that $20?
Yeah, I don't know, I mean,
Well, when you look at page 1, that money is in brackets.
And last year, we were not in that shape.
We weren't in brackets.
No, sir.
That means we're in deficit.
So it was a benefit.
Definitely, it was definitely a benefit, for sure. And definitely the market prices had a big impact as well.
That's something we couldn't forecast.
That's exactly right. So just wanted to kind of point out these two accounts to you again and the importance of them and how any tipping fee increase could also help to benefit these designated accounts as well. I'm gonna let Vince take over again with the leachate and transfer station information.
Okay, so the transfer station, I'll do first on page 16. I'm gonna start it. So when we're talking about transfer stations, the cost for it are going to depend on a lot of decisions that are made up front. So let me go over a couple of those. So first of all, we got to say, what are you transferring? What kind of waste streams are you transferring? MSW, C and D are typical. Are you going to do one of them? Are you going to do both of them at the same time through the same facility? And that designates the size of the facility, the tipping floor area where you stack material up and still have room to work. It determines with the quantity of each of those that you're going to manage. It says, do I have to have one pit or two pits? If you have a lot of material, I'd say that you run, say, one waste stream through one pit and another separate waste stream through the second pit. So every time you add that, that's cost to the building, the capital that you put up front. You also have to look at the type of vehicles that you're going to run. They have a capacity. So depending on the quantity of waste, you get into how much each truck will haul it per trip. You get into the haul distances to the disposal site. Where is the end all be all place to dump it? The farther away it is, the longer it takes each truck to make a trip. So the longer the trip, the more vehicles you have to have and the more drivers you have to have. And then the cost of the tipping fees at the site. So whatever they're going to charge you, all are the cost. So I've got on the next sheet, this was an analysis that was done for the purpose of trying to compare apples to apples on piggyback 3 versus not doing piggyback 3 and having to match the same capacity with a transfer station. Now, this would not be dual stream. This was based on one-way stream of MSW, municipal solid waste only 400 tons a day, so it's not a huge quantity. So this transfer station, just the building itself, if you looked at it, was about a $2 million building. Again, that would be a minimum building. You may hear that City of Myrtle Beach is building a transfer station. I'd venture to guess it's not going to be a $2 million building. I'd venture to guess it's going to be quite a bit more.
Nashville's was what, 6 million? Because of all the graft?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Asheville was 10 million what they spent. They said you had the operator say that they thought they could have got by with 6, yes, on all that. But a $6 million building is a pretty substantial building. This analysis was on 400 tons a day, and it was hauling to Screaming Eagle, and you've got the round trip time and the assumption of the type of vehicles and number of vehicles. But the long and short of it is, this analysis came up to be about, in today's dollars, you did it all today, $52 a ton. That'd be the all-in cost for a transfer station to construct, haul, and pay tipping fees. And I think we assumed a tipping fee, it was based on $23 a ton. The Screaming Eagle would give you $23 a ton at the gate. I'm not convinced they would today give you $23 a ton. So obviously, if you went to to tell you what it costs to do a transfer station, you got to define all the things I just talked about to give you what those costs would be. One of the most important is where's it going to end up? Where's it going to go? What are they going to charge? Then you work backwards from there.
Well, one of the most important to me is, did you figure in the liability for us being a potentially responsible party?
No, ma'am, none of that includes any of that, but can I elaborate on what you're speaking of?
You may.
All right, so it's a pretty famous case, and some of y'all know that I work for power companies and so forth and so on. But what happens is that if you accept the waste at a landfill, and this material gets disposed and it goes into gets to the point that you got a major cleanup, and it exceeds the ability of the owner to pay for it. Most of the time what'll happen, that'll happen is that the owner will declare bankruptcy. The government comes in, calls it a Superfund site. Superfund, basically the way they go in there is they don't care what you contributed to it. It's irrelevant. What they say is they go by ability to pay. Is who they go after on the cleanup cost. And so they'll go after county governments because they have the ability to assess taxes and so forth. They'll go after utilities because, deep pockets and so forth. And, typically let's call it the haulers that brought it to it, they typically don't have those type of deep pockets, and they can declare bankruptcy and start up tomorrow's another name. They're not going to get those guys for the cost of the cleanup. So what you're saying is you're putting your material in with other parties you have no control over, who may contribute a majority of the problem to the situation, and will not pay any of the solution, and they'll come after you having the ability to pay for the solution.
Already been there.
So that's
I've
something.
done that with the,
Because there were 50-some people, I think, on that list with the electronics.
Yeah.
That man sued 7, and we were one of them at the top of the list. And he
Ability to
got his
pay.
money.
Ability to pay.
Okay, and we only had, he can only prove we had one bundle of stuff in there and what it cost us. So I'm not real interested in private industry, and I've been in private industry all my life, my family has, so I'm not insulting it. But it seems in South Carolina, private industry does not set aside what we do, and they can file bankruptcy. And it doesn't seem to be that falls upon them, it falls upon the 7 people. I think all 7 people were city or county to do that. So we have no control over what Screaming Eagle chooses to do, right, wrong, good, bad, ugly. So the potential there for a problem to me is pretty large. And for us to be putting so many years of trash in there, the potential of those millions of dollars, as far as I'm concerned, should be figured into this.
Yeah, I would weigh that against, being, that is a large facility, waste management. They're worldwide, but nationwide, but
They
worldwide.
have problems worldwide.
Yes, but,
They keep growing to cover them up.
yeah, but, you know, they certainly serve a large community. You know, and you wouldn't be the top of those communities, but you'd be one of them.
Yep.
No doubt, you'd be one of them. And so,
The reason we're here today, we've always tried to stay about 20 years ahead of the deadline. 2041 is our closeout date, so next year's 2020, and then you got 21 years looking out. And we know there's a liability there. We know there's gonna be a liability if the garbage ain't picked up here and what we're gonna do with it. There's gonna be a liability if you burn it, if you bury it, or if you gasified, another word for burning it. But, it's something that we're gonna have to keep in mind and how we're gonna do. Years ago, the Solid Waste Authority was set, bought property on Highway 57, bought property on Ron McNair, gonna put in transfer station. Ron Andrews had already been the operation. Everything was in place, and a previous board member scuttled that whole project because he had property down the railroad track. So now we've got 2 vacant pieces of property. And we've heard during the process on the waste management study that we ought to be hauling out, like other people. That tipping fee today, if we'd hauled it out like Lawrence County is doing, it'd be over $60 a ton. Tipping fee, but it's all gonna be more expensive in the future. Gonna be more liabilities. And if you put the liability into this thing, and if we start building money for a transfer station, it's gonna be very, very expensive. But we know the liability's there. We felt it in federal court with TVs, so.
We have 2 mandates, one or 3 actually. First mandate is we have to take your garbage. Second mandate is because we're public, we have to manage our dollars. The third is that we need to be more respectful of the future cost and let people know that we can't take all your garbage and cheaply. You're gonna have to start paying now for the future costs that we're gonna have to. If we don't start people thinking about reducing the amount of garbage they produce, they'll continue just to pitch everything. We've got to build in some costs.
I may be going off script and y'all pull me back in I need to, but even this analysis, let's just say this analysis I gave you was correct. Everything was exactly right. $52 a ton for this transfer station handling garbage does not compare to your tipping fee.
Right.
They're not comparable.
And that's assuming what distance for final disposition.
But I'm just saying, if that was correct, let's just say you could enter a contract and pay, and this is your cost. So if you were to incur this cost of $52 a ton, where are you making up the cost to do all these other things that your current, was it 36 a ton, is funding other programs. So to have an apples to apples, this 52 would have to grow above that number to be able to still fund the program. So the 52 does not compare to 36.
Because it doesn't cover any of the other.
Right, so that's not a comparison. You'd have to say 52 would compare to whatever just the disposal side of this cost, which is, the 20-something or whatever, $20 a ton, whatever that number is. That's the comparison. You still got to get the funds for all these other programs on top of this.
To me, a transfer station is just not feasible monetarily, and because of the liability we would have, that you really would have to add in there would make it not feasible monetarily.
Cost prohibitive.
So anyway, that's what I had on transfer stations. If I had any questions.
Food for thought.
Okay,
We have to constantly look at this, though, as an alternative, so that we're still staying in the right economic range.
Well, I think.
Comparison
Yeah, you're gonna have to plan for something,
Yeah.
because we're not gonna be able to continue to take it all here. It's gonna have to go somewhere. So, I mean, you're gonna have to start looking at other alternatives. And I think you make a good point too, and Bo, I mean, people are gonna have to start learning that they have to pay for some of these things. If they look at some of these cities like New York, Florida, and all these other places that they have to pay these fees, you gotta pay, because we can't continue to take it all for $36. Ain't gonna happen, because everything is going from an inflation, and, we need more equipment, we need this, we need that. Something has to change, and I think public has to start realizing that they're gonna have to pay a little bit more to get rid of some of this stuff. Or start using less, like you said.
They could choose to use less.
Yeah.
And like in Germany, they could also choose to only use products that were recycled.
Well, I think too, when you
There are
start.
a lot of choices they could
Yeah, when they
make
start.
when they look at the
Well,
money.
they don't look at the choices now because it's so cheap for them.
But we can make it
When
different.
you make it difficult, and you have to start going in the pocket, I think people will start looking at making better choices of the kinds of things that they use. Then they have to start paying for it.
Again, I'll say, I get to go around and work for a lot of different clients, and, the term tipping fee is thrown around loosely. Y'all charge $36 at your gate, but that's not pure tipping fee. That is your funding system. $36 is your funding system. And you're comparing your funding system for all the services you provide to other folks' tipping fee.
Right.
So if you go around to the county and say, what's your tipping fee? It's not funding the same program, just not apples to apples. You got a $36 funding system. Well, I look at it. All right, leachate management system. That's on page, I'm really starting on 20. But the way I think about leachate is, first of all, there's a quantity issue. So the quantity is going to be based on a couple of things here. It's obviously the area that you're collecting leachate from. So the bigger the area that you have lined collecting leachate, that's going to increase the potential generation, the depth of waste and the cover situation over that liner. So the higher the waste is, the more cover that's over it, the less leachate that's going to actually go through and be collected as leachate, the more of it you can shed off as stormwater. It helps reduce this quantity, and obviously rainfall amounts. You can't compare yourself to somebody in Arizona who got different rainfall. So quantities it's a combination of really all of these factors. And so we've got a volume that we've got to deal with. You've got a quality issue that you've got to deal with. And there are things that, whoever's accepting this leachate, they've got to meet certain discharge limits, and in your case, Grand Strand's accepting it, they're accepting wastewater from all over different industries and municipalities and so forth. And so they're trying to get a control on what's coming in. They look at things like pH, BOD, COD, metals, anything I'm leaving out, something along that line. That's the big ones. So, they don't want you to spike their system. So they want reasonable limits on these items coming in. And the last bullet I call emerging contaminants. Everybody's heard the words like PFAS, and there's all these that are happening they're on the radar. We're thinking about them. Nobody's defined them, but it is something. It's something to keep in mind. And so when you really look at quality and quantity put together, you have a storage system out here. And that storage system, you're trying to meet all of these. You're trying to contain the volume. You're trying to meet a quality issue before it goes out. And we're expanding the facility, ever expanding it. And so, so the amount of storage that you need on site is going to be highly dependent on how fast or what your transfer volume is. Transfer is the volume that you can pump out to the treatment system. So if you can increase the volume that goes out, you need less storage. Now, so what we've seen here is that there's a force main that goes from your tanks out to the system for Grand Strand. The Solid Waste Authority actually constructed the force main, I believe, from the tank to Highway 90, and then gave the system to Grand Strand. So Grand Strand owns the force main that goes between 90 and tanks. We've seen a decrease in the amount of water, liquid that can be pumped through that. And we've looked at it, we've looked at pumps, we've looked at all the engineering side of things, and it's really not making sense. If you look at the pressures, you look at it, the amount being pumped through it is, there appears to be a constriction somewhere, right? And so, so either we decide how to deal with the constriction, or we're gonna have to build more storage here to,
We don't want to wait for it to erupt.
sorry?
We don't want to wait for it to erupt.
Well, so on the system, what we're looking at is, we're looking down the road that something's got to be done. We got to make a decision. Are we gonna build storage, or are we gonna try to fix the pumping rate? Is what I'm saying. Don't know the answer to that. Grand Strand certainly is a huge participant in this conversation, which, I don't deal with them, don't know the politics and so forth, but obviously that's a large hurdle that we're gonna have to try to overcome. That's probably the way to start, is dealing with Grand Strand, know what your parameters are with them, and then back up, deal with what you control after that.
But it is their system.
They own the force main from the tank to Highway 90 and everything else.
And that's where the problem is.
Yes, sir, we believe it's that. So how you deal with it, it could be in your interest, and you get more bang for the buck for you to pay for replacing their system, that line. You get more bang for the buck by putting a new pipe in the ground. Our theory is that over years, what's happening is pipe that used to be, this big has scaled up and it's become, it's like breathing through a straw now.
Okay.
And then a new pipe may completely fix this. Grand Strand, I don't know where they're incentivized for them to incur the cost to put a new pipe in. So this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about.
What did we actually build and then give to them?
Sewage line.
The sewage line.
It's basically a 4-inch PVC line in the ground that's buried, and you gave them the force main. In theory, they should be maintaining it as part of their system.
Right.
I'm not gonna get into all that, but
Have you ran a camera or anything down it?
Can they run a rotor rooter through there and clean up the scale?
been a little bit of that done. in the past.
That scale coming from the landfill, tough.
Yeah, so, probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. Probably not.
Probably cheaper just to.
Yeah.
Probably
Replace
should
the
put a
line.
pipe in.
New pipe.
Yeah, but I think you still need to find the problem before,
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately,
Well,
I mean, if you run a camera or something down and you see that is constriction, then you may need to replace the pipe. But
yes. I think that would be done. What I'll tell you is there have been, in the past, there has been a place that, we've cut the pipe by digging, like in a bar area or something, we cut the pipe, had to replace it, and you look at the pipe that was dug up, and you can see it scaled up. So that's the only, I mean, we got a horsepower pump, and we got a, what we call a head, or what it's got to overcome, and it ought to say this much goes through it, and that much is not even close to us going through it. And the only rational thing you can say is there is a constriction somewhere between here and there. It could be a valve that shut off. There's not supposed to be any valves, but something that's not letting the water flow as much as a pipe should allow.
What we're gonna do is get Grandstand Water and Sewer in here and talk to them and see if we can't come up with a mutual solution.
I think we need to at least figure out what the problem is before we
Yeah.
come up with that solution.
Well,
And Grandstand has cameras, so they could run it down and check it.
yeah, we certainly wouldn't just go put a pipe in without knowing it would, but I think that's our lowest hanging fruit, is to look for that first. Is the pipe.
Put another big tank in back here.
I was just gonna say, the tank capacity, has that been an issue?
It gets pretty close sometimes of overfilling
It's becoming more of an issue,
as the landfill gets bigger and we collect more.
Yeah.
and there was,
The elevation's getting higher, the flow should increase.
Yeah, well, when we put phase 2 in of it, then that puts more to it. The water that's currently going off
Yeah.
is gonna go to it, and then that's what started this conversation. Well, when we start piggyback phase 2 in 2 or 3 years.
But we don't wanna pay
What
for a
happens?
new storage tank if the problem is the flow line.
that's why we're
We
saying,
have it.
you don't control the flow. I would not want to build another tank before I explored the line. That's all I'm really saying.
Is there a
Spend
major
money.
cost in replacing the line? I mean, is it?
Well,
What kind of?
our thing is to sit down and talk to Grandstand, and they may say, we'll run a camera down and check it, they may replace, we don't know that, we're not there yet. 'Cause we don't know. But it's something that was brought up, I brought it up to Vance, that when we start on phase 2, we're gonna have more water in there, and there's times we have to send somebody out on the weekend to pump out, because we got enough capacity, especially when it's raining.
I think you're on the right path, like Sam says, you gotta figure out what the problem is. And I think you guys are starting in the right direction. You need to look, see if it's the pipe. And if it's not the pipe, then that says that we have problem with storage. So I think you're in the right direction. You just gotta follow through and figure out what it is, and then we can work to a solution.
Stephanie gets real nervous when we got cameras on them tanks, she gets real nervous when the cameras go out.
You don't wanna have to climb
Well,
in.
you know about those cameras, cause they're watching you.
But
But they don't start saying I'm Santa Claus.
But what happened is there was an agreement with Grandstand back when we first did this, that was a flow rate. There was a flow rate, and then there was quality. We want flow, and the flow that we're actually getting is half or less than what was agreed to. And I mean, we got the same horsepower pumps and all that used to do the flow, that are not doing the flow, and so it's getting to a point to get our attention.
They may have a valve on the other end. I don't know.
Well, they've got problems with all the highway.
You know,
90
so,
when it comes
yeah,
to
so,
those
you
lines.
know,
They
you gotta
always
figure
have
out
to
the whole
flush them out.
system.
What we've been told is there's a low pressure in the line.
Okay.
On Highway 90 where it's sags.
Sags, yeah.
And it's filling up. That's where they put the pump in.
There's a pumping station up there.
And the one on down the road where they force it through to clean it out. So when they do that, we can't pump it all. We cut off and pump it
So in
out.
other words, it might not even be in our line, it may be
Could be
further on
somewhere
in
else,
theirs
yeah.
that they would have to fix.
Yeah, it's like Van said, it could be that they cut our valve down because they don't want all that force on Highway 90. We don't know that answer, but we're gonna
You need to find that
We're
out.
gonna sit down and talk to Grandstand and say, we got this issue, what do we do about it? So we're nowhere near starting on where we're gonna go next, whether it be the pipe replacement or whatever, so we can sit down and talk to Grandstand.
I think I'd talk to them quickly, I'd hate for us to have an overflow in our stuff.
We're gonna try to do that right after the first of the year.
All I'm saying is, when you start talking about another tank, I mean, that's real money. And I just think in lieu of spending real money to do a tank, much rather take that same thing and find a better solution.
Where does the leachate, when, you have to start, where do you pump
Pump it into the sewer line.
it? In the sewage line, okay.
See, she has to first test it.
Right.
Test it.
She has to meet certain.
Well, we have to tell them what's in it, so they know how much to charge us for it.
Yeah. They charge you based on quality and quantity.
So, you know, we
Which,
do
from their standpoint, you understand.
Sure.
So if it costs them more to treat it,
Sure.
they charge us more.
So the last slide I have is getting more into a quality issue, you know, whatever's in it. I'm just giving you an example. So, you know, y'all may be aware or seen a presentation at one of the conferences, whatever, about New Hanover County. And they put in a reverse osmosis or ultrafiltration / reverse osmosis system. And people said, all right, well, if we're heading that way, give me an idea. Well, they've got about $5 million into that facility. It does about 100,000 gallons a day. All $7,000 a month just in electricity cost to run the system. And what that does is, if like a coffee filter, it filters stuff out, and they're left with a sludge. Right now, they're taking the sludge and they're putting it into the landfill. There's nothing that says you're taking things. So all this stuff is about concentration. You're taking things that are over thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons and you're putting it into something the size of a drum. Are you going to be able to put that sludge back in the landfill, or are you going to go to the hazardous waste site with it? It may not be hazardous the way it is, but once you filter it out and put it together, it may be hazardous. There's things like this that are coming. All I'm trying to tell you is all this stuff, and this is just me speaking, not for the Solid Waste Authority, just me. Grand Strand is in the wastewater treatment business. They have the economies of scale, and if there was a place to spend it, it's there versus here, is my opinion. And that being said, that's what
Reverse osmosis is the most expensive way to have it. That's the Mercedes, and it's not even a Cadillac, it's a Mercedes.
How much?
It's the one that works.
How much do we spend now per month with Grand Strand?
About 13,000.
It ranges from 8 to 30, based on the concentration, but I think our last month we over $13,000.
Yeah, it's based off of ammonia and BOD concentrations, and then they put it into a formula and come up with what they call a UOD surcharge. And I calculate the UOD number every month on my DMR, and then they take it and put it into their formulas to determine how much they charge us.
So by the time we figured in electrical cost and personnel to run it, I mean, we're at a wash.
But the water quality is much better. This is tertiary treatment when you go to reverse osmosis. What Grand Strand Sewer and Water does is just secondary treatment. They just add a little disinfectant to it and remove the solids.
What will we do with our sludge? After we clean it, will it ever go back in the Grand
I
Strand?
do not see this as we run it through this system and it goes into Sterislum. I don't see that. I don't see us getting rid of paying Grand Strand to accept it. What I'm saying is you're going to be paying close to, you may reduce some of your loading cost, that's what you're trying to say. If you were pumping pure water to them, it'd be less than pumping leachate because they got contaminants that they're building in. You would be reducing some of that contaminant cost to them.
Not near what it costs you to build it.
But
Yeah, we wouldn't.
adding this system would be nothing but an increase to today's cost. End of story, don't care what they did, you built this, your leachate management costs are going up.
Is there a
You have the best system around. When you take Screaming Eagle, you had to build a big plant to basically steam, turn the water into steam.
Evaporator.
And evaporate and taking it back, putting it back in the landfill. And I asked the manager down there, well, what's it doing to your concentration of your leachate? Because if you keep adding that stuff back, it's got to change it at some point in time. So I think really that of all systems you got, I've seen them where you put it in tractor trailers and try to haul it to tankers and try to haul it to PODs and PODs are accepting it. We lucky here.
Well, and that so-called steam system, things that are in there are volatile. Volatile means it goes up into the atmosphere, and this whole Title V stuff,
Potentially flammable.
I wouldn't go that route. Only thing I'm trying to tell you, you've got a great situation being able to go to Grand Strand.
Yeah.
It is great. End of story, great. And, I don't think we're trying to wean us off of Grand Strand. I would encourage you to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. You're a great partner.
If you were paying $20,000 a month, you still got a good deal.
Yeah.
I'm a whole lot more worried about Grand Strand coming to us and saying, we don't need you or want you, than I am about us trying to find a better way to do it.
And that's
I think we've
happening.
got the whole wrong approach here. And some
And
of
it's
our
happening
thinking
in
is
the
the
state.
fact that I don't believe there's ever been a pipe put in the ground and stuff run through it that didn't stop up.
Right.
That's what pipes do. And if we got to
That's their
replace that
business.
pipe,
Their water treatment
that's
business.
just a part of
You know?
the maintenance
We
that
don't
we
wanna try
have
to
on
take
the
that away.
system to keep Grand Strand happy.
Yeah.
Ours, theirs, whoever's, makes no difference.
Again, outsider, not know-it-all. To me, Grand Strand's a great partner in your overall business, the way I look at it.
Well, he's gonna talk to him, we'll find out what's going on.
Yeah.
And Roto-Rooter might be the route.
Or Nehemiah, whatever it takes.
In 1989,
All the lines are here.
We got your seat right there.
Well, you can come up here.
Right there.
You didn't mean outside the door, you
I'm
mean.
inside the door.
Now we got 4 chairs, just pick one.
All right, I just want to say Merry Christmas, y'all have a good one.
And to you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Mr. Jones, in 1989 in Charles City County, Virginia, right outside of Richmond, we were paying $3,000 a truckload to get rid of it for 7,500 gallons. $3,000, 7,500 gallons.
Again, my fear has always been they will leave us, not us leave them. I've never had a thought about, can we do better than the relationship we have with them? My fear is they're gonna say, we don't need you, you become an inconvenience and we don't want you.
Or we're a potentially responsible party to what they do with it and where it goes. And what it does.
I haven't heard that.
Luckily, they have a mandate too.
So you have a pre-treatment permit, I guess, what you say. So you meet parameters, and they're telling you what to sample for, and how often to sample it, and how you sample it. And this is a condition that you have to meet to discharge into their system.
We met those on yeah, we
I
met
don't
those
think
on
there's
electronics
anything you get
too.
rid of, you're not responsible for at some point in time down the road.
Well,
Makes no difference what it is when it leaves this property. Part of that goes with it.
Well-
I don't care what it is, but it's not enough, I don't think, for us to try to look at doing something else. However you get rid of it, you either gonna clean it up on this property, or you gonna accept that responsibility wherever it goes.
Well, you're always gonna have, 30 years ago, when I worked for Corning, getting rid of hazardous material, they had the cradle to grave. Now, they didn't say where the grave was, but wherever the grave is, you're responsible for it. If it's in your backyard or somebody else's backyard, if you got a problem. So I don't think we're gonna ever get away from that liability, but we have to look at the pros and cons and take the least route.
But the owners
We
of the
have to do
Superfund,
everything we can
Can
do to
do,
make
sure.
sure we do it.
But
the owners of the Superfund can print money. We
they can
can't.
always come after you. You know, you can walk out there and break your leg on this property right here and get sued.
Well, if you take the 5 million for the infrastructure, right, the cost, and divide it by $20,000, if we had to pay $20,000 for Grand Strand, divide that by 12 months, it'd take 20 years to pay for itself, and by then, we're at 2041.
It'd be close.
We'll be
Wow.
closed.
Yeah, you still wouldn't be paid for.
Correct. FYI.
Yeah.
That didn't include the $7,000 a month, right?
No,
That's right, yeah.
no, that includes that.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm encouraging you to consider them a partner.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's very good.
My
Can't do that
concern,
name just in time.
my concern is we have our own thing, we dump the water in serious swamp.
Close it up.
Something gonna find 1 part per million of cadmium and they're gonna shut us down.
No, any more we already on?
After hearing everything, does the board feel pretty much together on a couple of dollars increase tipping fee? We went
At least.
with the, rate increase, we did a rate study, we did everything that the county wanted us to do. We met with the city said we'd rather have a little one along than a big one right at one time. Mr. Johnson, I think, you missed the part that Vance was talking about with the closure and post-closure account. And I think, we can get with you individually, and I think the comfort level is there. I think it's built into those accounts. But these other accounts is where we're short on. And, I think that's where we need to direct these tipping fees to shore up those accounts. The staff's gonna continue to save money over budget and expenses. And those funds can be transferred into the account as y'all approve each time we transfer funds. And I think if we shore up these other accounts, they very well be more money to transfer. So that's some savings that staff does, putting off purchasing on stuff, saving money from budget items. But,
Basically, we don't want to abandon any of our diversion projects. We'd rather raise tipping fees rather than close processes that are currently functioning.
As I've said, if we put a tipping fee at the MRF, I think you're gonna lose. I think you're gonna lose there. You'll catch more argument, I think, from the cities, the businesses, that if you do that versus put the tipping fee at the gate.
We should continue to think about alternatives, but that alternative I don't think would fly.
And I think, less waste. Corporations have started that now, Walmart started, everybody started. When we first got into this zero waste, we were trying to push it from the grassroots up. And that's hard to push a Walmart into doing something. But I think, all of them are setting, examples now on throwaway cups and plastic cups and, everything. And the local chirp and birds in that group, I think, need to keep fire to the cities and other places that they can influence them to do better. But, we proceed on.
I think, as far as I'm concerned, I think you're headed in the right direction. I think the tipping fee at the gate's gonna be better, because you're not bringing up a new ideal. They're already expecting us to raise it at some point in time. So it's been, 2 years now, 3 maybe? So we should be right in parallel with their expectations, so.
And I think we're starting early enough to
Yeah.
give the cities notice
Right,
that you might as well prepare.
right.
That, Danny's gonna recommend $2 or $3 tipping fee.
Yeah.
And they can go ahead and start planning for it. Keep it on going.
No, I think a small tipping fee increment is a lot like, the price of gasoline. It only goes up by a penny or two. You don't notice the price of gas too much, but when it goes up 10 or 12 cents, you notice the same thing when you go to the dentist. You get 1 tooth pulled, it's not too bad, but you get about 6 of them pulled. Oh, you notice it right away. And I think the same thing here in tipping fees. We just do a little bit every year, and,
Well, I think it's just needed, because
Yeah.
of the funds that we're losing here, and you talk about diversion, things that we need to do. If you start putting those off, the efficiency of running this place begins to go down. So we gotta keep the efficiency up, and we gotta have equipment to do that, so. And I think they understand that as well, so, I'm in agreement with that. I think you're moving in the right direction. That's my feelings.
Have lunch for everybody.
Lunch? Anybody got anything else for the good of the cause?
No.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's and the
Yeah.
meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.